I don't think so. They have some of the best students in the country attending. Why is it so full? Readability. One of my former colleagues, Martin MacDonald-Ross at the British Open University, did a simple survey, a very simple survey, surveying 3,000 students on their reading skills to discover that the prestigious British Open University was pitching the teaching material above the heads of the students. The research evidence confirmed it was incomprehensible. They were learning despite the teaching. Yeah, that's right. They were learning despite the teaching. You wouldn't do that, would you? Of course you wouldn't. But I think it's important. Developmental testing, field trials. If you were, making a product, whatever the product is, there is no way you would set up a production line, a marketing system, costing, sales. You wouldn't do all of that if you weren't supremely confident that this works. What do we do in education? We get the course together, we push it out, and spend our time praying, hoping that it's okay. Costs and economics. I said earlier, I'm not an accountant, but money is always important. Reggie mentioned the University of the South Pacific, and I was asked to review the university a few years ago. For those who know the University of the South Pacific, it's fairly small, about 20,000 students. It had more courses than the British Open University that had 200,000 students. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to do the arithmetic, to do the maths, and realise there's some very small population courses. Courses with more staff than students. Courses with one person doing the course. This is crazy. This is bankrupting the institution. You can't afford to do that. So costs and economics are always important. And obviously, programme review and evaluation. The British government have recently announced they're instituting a national student survey. Great. Every course is going to be surveyed in the country. Fantastic. Suddenly we'll get some quality here. We're going to evaluate that course at the end of the course. One shot time, one questionnaire, one moment in time, one window in time. Of course, that will quite neatly sidestep those who dropped out and failed. So we won't be surveying those. What a distortion. You wouldn't do that, would you? Of course you wouldn't, because you'd want that information to improve your course. So those are the areas that I think can be strengthened. And I pause in the last few minutes, a series of questions for you to answer. Now, you don't have to put your hand up. You don't have to write them down. They're there in the paper if you want to read them. But just consider, do you provide diagnostic material for your learners so they can check their preparedness, their numeracy skills, their literacy skills, their IT skills, those skills they will need to survive the first few weeks of the course? Do you provide that material? Certainly, when my university, Manchester, provided preparatory courses to students who were destined to fail, we would put money on the fact they would fail within weeks if they started the course as they planned. By going through this preparatory course, everyone survived and outperformed other students on the first year of the course. Outperformed them. So that time spent on that preparatory material was tremendous. They didn't maintain their superiority in years 2 or 3, but I don't care. They survived that critical first term, that first semester. Do you provide those materials that they can study in their own home before they start the course? When we've done this elsewhere, some students have taken 120 hours in preparation. They obviously needed it. Without that, they would be destined to fail. Do you collect evidence on the effectiveness of this material? It's no use providing it if you don't know if it's any good. If it's any good, you can tell people. Briefing and training. The biggest asset at any institution is not the buildings. These are grand buildings, but this is not a major asset for the university. It's the staff, the people. They're the biggest asset. We invest in them. No one would think of buying a new car and not filling it with petrol, oil, maintenance, repairs and so forth. So why is it that we can train someone and they go off with a degree never to receive any more repairs and maintenance? We need that continuing professional development. How do you invest in your staff? Is it a requirement? Is teaching a profession? Well, I would say so. If I were a doctor, I would probably be required to undertake ongoing professional development. If I were an architect or a dentist, I would be required to undertake that CPD. Maybe we should have the same. And what evidence is there that these tutors are effective? Because if they're not, it needs to be changed. Workload. Do you know what the reading ability is of your students? Are you sure? Are you really, really sure? If you're not, it's not that difficult. There's something called a close test. C-L-O-Z-E, close test. It's very reliable, it's very valid. Of course, we now have the technology. On your laptop, on your desk, there'll be the Fleece Reading E-score. It's probably buried in the software there, but believe me, it is there. And you can assess the readability of that material from your desktop within seconds. And it might surprise you. Do you estimate the workload? Last year I was at Monash University doing some work there, and I ran a workshop on student workload. One of the people in the workshop was an instructional designer, an educational technologist, who came to me about 3 days later and said, Fred, I took away those ideas, those guidelines that you shared with us, and I've looked at the course that I'm currently developing with colleagues, and I've estimated all the different elements, what they add up to. And it's 3 times over length.